Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be talking about a deck from 2006 called Delta or Rye Eggs. Delta won Nationals in 2006. It also got second at Nationals. Kind of a cool story behind the deck, actually. So this is a rogue variant. Not very many people knew about it. And the actual deck was built the night before Nationals by three people: Kyle Pukasukovic, Martin Moreno, and another guy who got second. So Martin ended up getting first. Puka unfortunately didn't do so well at the event, but this is the first deck to ever go undefeated XO at Nats. So really powerful variant. Let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Pikachu. Pikachu's got 50 HP. Single retreat, a weakness to fighting, and it's metal type because every Pokemon in this deck that we attack with is Delta species. So the first attack, Tail Whap for 10, is pretty decent, and then Steel Headbutt for a metal and 2 colorless, 30. Flip a coin of heads. This attack does 30 damage plus 10 more damage. I'm actually not sure whether they played this Pikachu or another Pikachu, which is better in the actual Nats list. There is a Pikachu with a potential paralyzed attack, and I think it has 10 less HP. I think it's got like 40 HP. I'll put a scan of it up, but 10 HP in this format isn't that big of a deal, but it can, depending on what your opponent's playing. Like if they're playing an Entei, or not an Entei, Arcanine, they can snipe that twice for a knockout. So I mean, it could be bad, but having that paralyzed attack is also very nice as well. So I could see an argument for both being made. And then you play the Pikachu to play Raichu. So Raichu's got 70 HP, free retreat, which is awesome. No resistance and a weakness to fighting. So Zap is the first attack. Zap is an awesome attack. So for 1 colorless, this attack does 20 damage to each Pokemon that has any Poke Powers or bodies, yours and your opponent. So you don't play any Pokemon with powers or bodies just because it seems kind of foolish to play Zap and then also play stuff that you can snipe yourself out with. But a lot of other decks play a ton of Pokemon with bodies and powers. This format is filled with Pokemon with powers. So because of that, Zap is really strong and it's such good spread. Like one, spreading 20 everywhere. Tapu Koko, which is like a recently printed card, does 20 everywhere for a DCE. And like back in the day, being able to get 20, it's not everywhere, but if every Pokemon on your opponent's board has a power or a body, which a majority of the Pokemon in the format did, you snipe 20s everywhere. And that's just such an aggressive start to be doing on your opponent. I mean, you get dropped for 25 turns and then all of your Pokemon with 100 HP are dead. And yeah, you play a lot of Raichus and a lot of ways to recover Raichu, so that the amount of spread that you can get off Zap is actually really impressive. It's a very good attack. And then Metallic Thunder, which is another really great attack. So metal colorless, it does 50, and you can discard 2 metal energy attached to Raichu. If you do, this base attack is 90 instead of 50. So Metallic Thunder definitely has its places as well. If you need to one-shot something really big, being able to attach a Metallic Thunder, Scramble Energy, and then you can just discard the Scramble and hit for 90. So it's a really good powerhouse attack, as well as a Pokemon that can chip. I think Raichu is a very versatile card in this deck. Okay, so you play 4 Exeggcute as well. So 50 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to psychic. Rollout is the first attack, so rollout for 10, single colors for 10, and then Pebble Throw for a fighting and a colorless. Choose from your opponent's Pokemon, it does 20. So that's, okay, snipe. And you do play ways to get that energy. So knowing that you have Pebble Throw, the deck does a lot of sniping. So knowing that you have that attack to snipe if you need to can potentially be really important in a game. But you play that to play the Exeggutor. So Exeggutor is a fighting type, which is actually really relevant. Being a fighting type is great because it lets you one-shot Sneasels and Manectrics, and it just does a really good job of being a force in the meta, because fighting type is a really good weakness to hit. And then Delta Circle is the first attack. So for 2 colors, you do 10 plus 10 for each Pokemon you have in play that has Delta on its card. So if you have a full board, you're doing 70. Which is definitely pretty decent. And then, that one-shots anything that's really relevantly fighting weak. You one-shot a Manectric, you one-shot a Sneasel, which is really good. And then Split Bomb is another really good attack as well. So for a fighting double colorless, choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, and it does 30 to each of them. So being able to snipe out with both Pokemon just makes your spread very good. You can attach with Raichu early. You play special metals, so your Raichus hopefully stay alive for a couple zaps, and then as soon as the Raichus go down, you can finish stuff up with Exeggutor, which is just a really good strategy of the deck. And the amount of chip damage that you do with Raichu makes Delta Circle in the mid to late game usually able to finish off a lot of your opponent's threats that they want to put in the active. So Exeggutor is a great part of the deck. They play 4 Holon's Castform as well. So Holon's Castform works like this. And we're actually going to demonstrate Holon's Magnemite while we demonstrate Holon's Castform. Okay, so let's say you have an Exeggutor in the active, okay? The reason that you play these is because your Pokemon search lets you get energy. So let's say on my first or second turn, I hit the Exeggutor and then I hit a Magnemite, okay, and you attach Magnemite like this, okay? So Magnemite is a colorless energy. It can be attached to any Pokemon as long as, you know, it just is one colorless, and then you touch it like that and boom, now I have a colorless attached, okay? And then Castform works like this. So when you have a Castform in your hand, so say this is my third turn, I've already had that attach on there for a turn. I go like this, I can attach that, and then this energy that's already on that Pokemon goes back to the hand. And then now this is worth 2 rainbow energies. So you can get the fighting for Split Bomb, or you can get the Metallic Thunder off. It's single Holon's Castform discard fills the requirement for Metallic Thunder. So I mean, that's really good to know that you have that as well. And just having Pokemon that you can attach as energy just makes you really consistent, because all the time you're mentoring or, you know, having any Pokemon search, retriever or whatever, it keeps that energy in your hand as well. And just being able to get consistent attaches just makes your deck that much better. Okay, getting into the trainers now. So we got 4 Holon Transciever, great card. I mean, all the Holon supporters in this deck, you play a couple of them that are like specific to Delta Pokemon. So it's actually really nice, like Holon, I think it's Researcher. Holon Researcher? Yeah, Holon Researcher is Holon specific. So Holon Transciever just searches for all of your Holon cards, and you play a fair amount of them. Mentor is a pretty important card in the deck as well. So being able to find your Mentor to get an Exeggcute Pikachu and like maybe like a Magnemite turn 1, that's another reason that Magnemite and Castform is so strong, really, is because you get Mentor. So Mentor can search either of these cards, and if you don't have an energy in your hand, but you do have one of these, technically you get your attach for the turn. So yeah, just a really good consistency card in the deck. You play 3 Pokemon Retriever as well. So I mean, you're running a 4-3 line. So I mean, depending on what kind of matchup you're playing, you need different lines out. Like if you're playing against something that's fighting weak, you need to be having the Exeggutor out, and it really just depends on what your opponent's board is. So being able to retrieve those Pokemon depending on what Pokemon or types you want to hit can definitely be really nice. They play 2 Swoop Teleporter as well. So Swoop Teleporter, search your deck for a basic Pokemon and switch it with one of your basic Pokemon in play, and then discard the previous basic Pokemon. So all special conditions and damage, everything stays the same. But that's great because if you start with a Castform or a Magnemite, you really don't want to start with those. They're your energy. Starting with a Castform is actually good because of Delta Draw. I didn't even talk about that. So Delta Draw, count the number of Pokemon in play that you have that has Delta on its card, and then you draw for up to that many. So that's the reason you play 4. Starting with a Castform is fine. But after your turn 1, you don't really have any use for Castform. So being able to just get it out of there, but keeping the energy attached, you can just swoop, get the Castform out. So let's just do this. So let's say you're starting with a Castform, right? And you have the Magnemite. Okay, and then you Swoop Teleporter. You can go Swoop, discard this. Now I have this here, and then if I get another attach and an Exeggutor, then I'm attacking. So it's kind of cool that you can switch your Pokemon around like that. Swoop just keeps your board really consistent, and it lets you switch around depending on what Pokemon you want to have in play. It's also good, like, just Pokemon search base. I mean, if you're searching your deck for a Pokemon, if you have one Pokemon to play and you have a Swoop Teleporter, it lets you get that crap Holon's Magnemite out of the active, so you don't have to linear attack. I mean, you can linear attack, but if you're linear attacking, you're in a rough spot. So you play 2 Energy Root as well. So Energy Root, it's a tool card, so you attach it to one of your Pokemon that's non-Pokemon EX, and then that Pokemon gets plus 20 HP. So I mean, 70 and 80 HP respectively is pretty low, but when you buff that up, 90 and 100 is decent, especially with special metals on Raichu. If you get a couple special metals on there, it can definitely be difficult to knock out a Raichu. And that just plays to your advantage because the more zaps that you can get in with a single Raichu, the more effective your deck is. Just because let's say you get like 3 zaps off before you die. That's 60 damage on every Pokemon with a power in a body. Now you only need a couple more zaps and you can potentially get a board clear on your opponent. So Energy Root kind of just lets you have that maybe one more turn of zapping before you go down. Okay, getting into stadiums now. So we play 3 Battle Frontier, which is an amazing stadium. So I've talked about Battle Frontier a bunch in my other videos. I'm not going to go too deep into it now, but it shuts off a lot of stuff. There's a lot of really relevant dark type decks, metal decks, and Pidgeot is the normal type evolved Pokemon that it shuts off. Pidgeot's a really consistent card that being able to just drop a Battle Frontier and then any stage 2 deck that relies on Pidgeot, shutting it off is really good. And there's so many matchups where Battle Frontier is just a great card. And you do play 2 Cursed Stone as well. So Cursed Stone is actually pretty interesting in this deck. So because you have that snipe with Split Bomb and Zap, Cursed Stone helps to just put the pressure on your opponent even more. So anytime in between turns, each player puts a damage counter on his or her Pokemon that has a power. So there's a lot of really good relevant powers in this format, like I said. So being able to zap, hit them for 20, and then if you have a Cursed Stone out, you're hitting them for 30. every turn. And if they don't hit a stadium bump, that's 40 damage, which is like insane pressure for this format. Like 40 damage on your Pokemon with powers. Let's talk about Dragonite, Dark Dragonite. So that's a really relevant Pokemon. 120 HP. If you have a Cursed Stone out, it takes Zap 20, Cursed Stone 30, 40 back to you. It takes 3 zaps with Cursed Stone. If they don't have a stadium bump and you zap them 3 times, it kills their Dragonite, which is like so much pressure for the fact that they had to spend 3 turns getting that Dragonite out. Just a really good spread card, to be honest, in this deck. Okay, so getting to the supporter cards. So we play 4 Holon Mentor. Holon Mentor is great for consistency. It just finds your basic Pokemon early, and like I said, it gets that Magnemite, that Castform. You can get it with Transceiver, and it's just like a staple in this format. It's such a good search card. A lot of decks play Mentor. And then you also play 2 Rockets Admin. So Rockets Admin is a pretty staple card in this format as well. Each player shuffles their hand to their deck, and then they draw up to their prize cards. And, you know, great attack late game, because often what happens is you zap with Raichu a bunch. So you go zap, zap, zap. This Raichu dies. Zap, zap, zap some more. I'm in a position where you're bored. I can split bomb 2 things for prizes, but you've taken 2 prizes. So you can admin your opponent, put them to 4, and then snipe again, take your prizes, and then they're down to 4 cards and you're up to 8, because you draw 6 off the admin and then you draw 2 off the prizes. So it's just a really good swing card, especially in this deck. Like, you play a lot of early spread, and so being able to admin your opponent back after they've knocked out your spread Pokemon is really, really effective. You play 2 Steven's Advice as well. So Steven's Advice is a really good supporter card. Draw a number of cards up to the number of Pokemon, number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. So if your opponent has 6, you just straight draw 6. Unfortunately, you can't use this if it's the 7th card in your hand, but still a really, really good card, especially with how full people's benches in this format got. You play 2 Holon Researcher as well. So Holon Researcher is a great card. It is a Holon card, so you do have to discard a card from your hand to play it. Search your deck for a Metal Energy, which is great, or a Pokemon, basic Pokemon or evolution that has Delta. So all of your Delta Pokemon you can search out with Holon Researcher, which is really great. And also finding special metals. Special metals on a Raichu, again, it just makes you more livable. So when you're able to find that special metal, you're living for 1 to 2 more turns, and that can make the difference between you having enough damage on the board to clear it and not doing that. So definitely a really powerful supporter. You can play a Holon Scientist as well. So Holon card, discard a card from your hand. And then if you have less cards in your hand than your opponent, draw cards until you have the same number of cards as your opponent. So that's great with Transceiver, because you just play 1. Because if you're in a position where you don't have very many cards in your hand and your opponent does, this is a format where some decks just have a bunch of cards in their hand. You're able to get it out of the discard or to the deck with a Transceiver, and then just draw a bunch of cards up to what your opponent has. So that finds you like Scramble Energy, Special Metals, Evolutions, like whatever you need. It just draws you a bunch of cards in niche situations. And then you play an Adventure as well. So Holon Adventurer, discard a card from your hand, and then you draw 3 cards. If you discarded a Pokemon that has Delta on its card, which you play a lot of, draw 4 cards instead. So it can be really good to get that draw 4. You do play a lot of Pokemon Retriever, so discarding it with Adventure, getting that extra draw can situationally be worth it. And then you do play Scott as well. So Scott's a great supporter card. Search your deck up to 3 cards in combination of supporter cards and stadium cards. Show them to your opponent, put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So that is really great, because you can do stuff with Scott like get 2 stadiums and another supporter. So you have a supporter for next turn. You play a stadium. Let's say you get 2 Battle Frontiers, because you're playing against a deck that it struggles against Battle Frontiers. So you grab 2 Battle Frontiers, drop 1, and then you get like a Steven's Advice or an Admin or something for next turn. They bump your stadium. Then you can bump it back and have a supporter card for next turn. So it keeps your deck really consistent. It is a very good card in a deck that plays a lot of stadiums. Okay, getting on to the energy cards. So starting off with 4 Special Metal. Special Metal is great on the Raichu. I mean, you can fulfill the colorless cost with Exeggutor, but it's definitely preferable to do it with a Magnemite or a Castform or another energy. But yeah, great on a Raichu, because you can stack them as well. So if you have 2 on there and an energy root, it means you got 110 HP, and that isn't a super easy thing to knock out, especially with how fast Raichu gets out. It's a stage 1. And a lot of the Pokemon in this format are stage 2 Pokemon. So being able to, just have that attacker turn 2, attacking with a Special Metal, you have 80, and then boom, you're doing a bunch of damage. This format is kind of slow. So this deck in particular fed off the aggressiveness of Raichu. And I think that's one of the reasons it's a really effective deck. And then you do play 4 Scramble Energy as well. So Scramble Energy is really cool. So when Scramble Energy, it can only be attached to evolution Pokemon. If you're up or tied on prizes, then it's worth a single colorless. But if you're down on prizes, which this deck often does, like I said, you're spreading damage. You're doing a lot of damage everywhere instead of single Pokemon and then knock it out. So because of that, Scramble Energy is great, and that's why you play 4. It costs triple rainbow if you're down on prizes. So let's say your opponent knocks out a Raichu, and you can all of a sudden just attach a Scramble Energy and then start split bombing with Exeggutor. You can use Metallic Thunder with Raichu as well. It just has a lot of really good uses in the deck, and it fits in with that theme of spreading because you don't ever really go up on prizes very quickly. You play a long game and you force your opponent to kill you first so that you can utilize your Scrambles, and Scramble is just such a really good card. You can play 3 DRE as well, double rainbow energy. So worth 2 rainbow energy, and then the Pokemon that this card is attached to does 10 less damage with their attack. So I mean, as long as you're doing your math right, it can be a really good single attach on Exeggutor. If you have that and you have a full bench of Delta Pokemon, you're still doing 60, which times 2 is 120. You can have 4 actually Delta Pokemon in play, and then a double rainbow energy, and that one shots a Sneasel. So that's a pretty easy requirement to fill. And again, it's just a part of that fulfilling the energy. You can put it on a Zap too. It's kind of nice because it only does -10 to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you put it on Zap, it's not -10 everywhere. It's only -10 to the active. And then the spread damage keeps the +20. So that's actually really nice. But yeah, this has been Raichu or Delta. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to them. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.